Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to talk to you about how to create a really effective and compelling change approach. So this is for your business. This is the approach you can adopt personally as a business to help you effectively and consistently manage change. So whenever you're looking to transform, whenever you need to change things in order to grow, to innovate, whatever it might be, you've got to have a consistent approach to how you do this. And it really doesn't need to be, overly complicated. Just to make sure you're aware, everything I'm going to cover in this video, the detail that sits behind it, so templates, resources, the real training of how to do this is available at changeproud.com. So a training and resources platform, go there, you can sign up as a user and you can get access to all the detail behind the steps I'm going to talk you through now. So your change approach really fundamentally needs 4 areas. Number 1 is vision. Create the vision. Number 2 is impact. Assess the impact. Number 3 is behavior, transform behavior. And number 4 is performance, sustain performance. So vision, impact, behavior, performance. Those are the 4 fundamental building blocks that you must have in any change approach that's going to be effective. Whatever size and scale of your operation, there'll be nuances within there around how much of the different parts you really need, but you've got to cover those 4 bases, and I'm going to talk you through the 4 now. So number 1, the vision, the piece that most people seem to kind of overlook or do, far too quickly for it to really have landed in the business. So whatever you're looking to change, small tactical stuff that's still quite important, but it's not kind of wholesale, massively changing the way the business operates, through to fundamental transformation. You've got to set out some kind of vision, picture, articulation of where you're trying to get to, so that people understand where you're heading, what the future looks like, what the outcomes are that you're aiming to get to, what will be different for them. Obviously, in any organization, having that vision piece is so key fundamentally, and it's not going to work fundamentally if you don't have leaders really aligned to that. So within this upfront piece around create the vision, it's about creating the vision, articulating it, telling the story around it, and aligning leaders to it. And that means more than just kind of having a couple of conversations. That means making sure, and again, this depends how much effort this is going to take, will depend on the size and scale of your business operation, but making sure that all key senior leaders have fully understood what the vision is. Get them to articulate in their own words what it means to them, to their business unit, their geography, whatever they're heading up, and make sure you've really captured what people's roles need to be up front. So what are we asking of leaders to ensure that this change we're going to go through is actually going to land? What are they going to need to do differently that might take them out of their comfort zone? How are they going to engage their people? Because, not one size necessarily fits all if you're in a large organization. So that's really the vision piece. I think, any way through a change kind of initiative, it's always good to keep going back, referring to the vision, use that as your anchor, use that as the narrative up front, which helps you come out with your kind of design principles, priorities, areas of focus in terms of what needs to happen when, because that's the end state, that's what you're aiming at. Anything from there which doesn't quite marry up with that, we need to go back and look at what we've not done correctly or what we need to adjust. Okay, so number 2, assess the impact. So once you know where you're going to get to, you've got to really then focus on what does the gap look like between where we are now and how we're going to get there, and what's the impact going to be on the business. The 3 key areas you really want to look at when assessing the impact, to keep it simple, is people, process, and technology. And there's lots of different things that can come under there. Technology, so what's going to be different around systems, data that we currently use that we might be using differently, that we need to have new functionality, things we know that are no longer fit for purpose. Process, where are we going to streamline what's not effective? Where have we got, clunky processes that aren't working? And then people, what needs to be different around the skills, knowledge, attitude, culture, type of talent we hire, etc., in terms of what's going to make this change effective. So you've really got to look across those 3 areas, and there'll be different things within each that matter to you, and some of them might not be relevant at all. If it's an entirely, intense data and tech focused piece, it's not going to have all that much impact on people because it happens broadly in the background, then you might not need to worry about that bucket or area. But you want to spend time in this area of your change approach going through the change impact assessment exercise, and I've got other videos which talk about how to do that, and on Change Proud it talks you through all the detail of how to do it and gives you the templates of how to do it. So it's understanding your impacts, and it's also understanding your stakeholder landscape, really key part here. And obviously key stakeholders, so people who will both be influenced by the change and who will also have an impact on how successful it's going to be. You want to get them involved, and you want to know where are the impacts going to land in terms of what we're doing, who are the populations that are going to feel this the most, who are the populations that are going to actually have a big influence on whether this is successful, even if it might not day-to-day impact them, like senior leaders or clients, customers, that type of thing. And how are we going to start to do our kind of stakeholder map mapping around who we need to engage with, how we need to manage them, what challenges we might come up against with the people and stakeholders involved in this project. And for your stakeholder analysis, you really need to think about, both internal and external, and influence and impact, 2 areas. So who has big influence on it and who's being impacted by it the most? And therefore, how do we need to engage, communicate with these 2 groups, possibly in different ways? Okay, so impact piece is really about doing your impact assessment and doing your stakeholder assessment piece, so you can then get some real engagement going with your stakeholders, and you've understood the lay of the land in terms of the gap between where you're trying to get to, where you are now, and therefore what your change response will ultimately be, which brings you on to step 3, which is transform behavior. So this is then really about your execution of the change. So how do we really make this change happen? And there'll be a number of things in terms of, what we're going to implement around people and data, and the change management aspect of that is broadly going to come under engagement and communications, training, learning, some kind of leadership role modeling, that type of stuff, and also potentially setting things up like change ambassador networks, change agents, that type of thing. So in here, it's really about, from the communications perspective, what are the messages we need to get out? What's the information people need to know? How are we going to get it to them? What are the right channels? Videos, podcasts, emails, FAQs. How are we going to get information and knowledge out to people in the right way? How important is the sender of our messages? So do we want leaders to really be talking visibly about this change? Because, it's really fundamental to the business, and we need to show their commitment and kind of get them behind the messaging. And then fundamentally, how do we really make sure that we've used channels that are going to work for different populations in the business? So again, back to our stakeholder assessment, who needs to know what, when, why, and how are the fundamental things you're trying to look at. And then the training or learning aspect. So is there anything we need to do here to equip people with new knowledge and skills? And how are we going to do that? And then the other 2 I mentioned, the kind of leadership piece and the change ambassador piece. Depending on the change, if it's really significant across different geographies and business units and it's quite complex, you might want to engage groups of employees across different areas to support helping the change really happen on the ground, and to kind of feed back into, what might be the central or program team around what's going on. And then leaders, just really pulling out that role that leaders are going to play, and not underestimating how important it is, because in a large business, we all ultimately mostly look to the people we work to every day, our immediate bosses, and we need to know that they're, kind of aligned with what we need to do here, and that we're kind of going to follow their lead. And then the final area, sustained performance. So this is, once you've really executed your change, you've got to have a whole load of things in place to make sure you're looking at adoption, benefits tracking, just general reporting and progress tracking across different areas of the business. What's gone well? Are we seeing the return on investment we wanted to see, etc. The Kirkpatrick model, which looks at evaluation of training. If you look it up on Google, it's also all available through Change Proud. Talks about the 4 levels of kind of evaluating success. And within there, that's really just from how did employees say they felt versus have they really learned something, new ways of working behavior been adopted? Has that had the impact on the business that we really expected to see? And really, from a kind of measuring success perspective, you've got to be looking at each of those levels as far as you can. And then sustaining performance for the long term. So not only are we kind of tracking, monitoring progress, we've also thought about what in the next 6 to 12 months could we do to make sure adoption is really happening and is embedded, like refresher training, anything else that might not have come up yet around pieces of the organization that hasn't quite landed, and we need to look at something more fundamental to help it land there. Okay, so those are the 4 fundamental areas any change approach with any business should really be looking at. Go to changeproud.com for lots more of the detail that sits behind this. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.